Let's go right there.
But let's say, before we go any further, Bob was pointing it out that Joni turns 15 this coming Monday.
Had to blame me for that, right?
Well, wait a minute. When's your birthday?
I'm not going to tell you. Okay, it's August.
Okay, I was going to say, you're not another February 29th.
No.
You know who is, and we'll send a birthday wish out to Steve McCarthy and Ryan, what's Ryan's last name? Oh, we'll think of it before the end of the show.
Do you all get together and have groundhog birthdays then?
No, but we should because,
okay.
and the three of us are the same year. Also, Lorraine
No way!
Wallstrom.
What are buy a lottery ticket.
Yes, Lorraine Wallstrom is for February 29th as well, but she isn't going to be 15.
But so you turn 15. That's a pretty good number, and it's a big number across the board anyway.
Rindell's. I knew I'd get it. Ryan Rindell's.
Rindell's.
There you go. Happy birthday, Ryan and Steve.
So happy birthday, Joni.
Yes.
And of course, we're going to talk about Ask Anything, but one of the things that we're going to be doing the following week is going to be talking about elder abuse. And that's been fun, kind of researching and preparing.
Sad, depressing.
Sad. It's overwhelming. It's heartbreaking. But it's a reality that what happens sometimes when people become they lose their capacity to make reasonable choices, then vultures attack.
You know, I read recently that one of the fastest growing fields in the law, as now they specialize into corporate law and bankruptcy and things, is elder law, because there's nobody there that represents the needs of the elder folks, and they have relatives that prey off them and steal their money and their pharmaceuticals and stick them in nursing homes and things, and so.
Oh, but sticking them in nursing homes sometimes is the best thing you can do.
Sure, but sometimes they do that to control them.
Yes.
Well, I mean, if you've lost your capacity, then where is the best care? Certainly,
But they may not have lost capacity is the point. It may be an inappropriate placement.
Well, then if you haven't lost capacity and it's inappropriate, then you should be able to say, no, I'm not going there, because we have autonomy. So we can talk about what it is that makes a person lose competence. Competence is a legal term. Capacity to make choices is more the term that we use outside. But that's another story. We'll talk about competence. That's an interesting issue, and determining who has the right to make their own choices. And when should that right go away? And that's $1 million question, isn't it, Bob? Think about that.
And that will be addressed a week from tomorrow.
And we could even address it today later, but we have a question, don't we?
Yes, and we would invite your questions. This is Prairie Doc Radio. Please call us at 692-1430.
And if you want competence to be addressed, give us a call. Okay, sorry.
Our first question is there a bad stomach flu going around?
I have not seen a bunch of stomach things. I have seen upper respiratory symptoms.
Although fortunately not influenza, which is just awesome.
I saw an influenza A in the hospital 2 weeks ago. If you look at the flu chart that's coming out, and we have it on our show tomorrow, it bumped up a little bit and it dropped down again. I mean, it's an amazing year.
But it has been pretty minimal, which is great. And I think that we have to thank those of you who have gotten your flu vaccine. We appreciate that you help protect others by getting that flu vaccine, and you're also protecting yourself. But I will comment on this stomach bug, and we prefer in healthcare not to call it the stomach flu because it gets confused with influenza, but I
Which is a
know that it is
respiratory
called.
infection. The stomach flu is not flu.
Right, it's a stomach virus. I haven't seen a lot in clinic, but I have talked to families who have. In fact, I had a family yesterday where everybody, mom, dad, baby, all had it at the same time, and so you just imagine how hard that is when everyone is sick.
I saw it in about 3 weeks ago in a few cases, but then I haven't seen it. But I'm not seeing a ton of people in the walk-in clinics at this point. So
Right, and I was walking yesterday, and we did not see, I would say that wasn't a lot of what we saw. It certainly can be out there for the person that's calling, and a lot of times people don't come in, of course. The main thing you need to do for that is stay home, wash your hands frequently, drink lots of clear liquids, avoid the dairy, the milk products, eat very bland foods, sip on chicken broth, and give it time. And so the times that we would encourage people to come in would be if you're getting dehydrated with a dry, sticky tongue, matte finish to your tongue instead of a shiny, glistening tongue. That's when it might be
Bring your baby in.
appropriate.
Right.
Right.
There was it's interesting discussion about the history of this viral gastroenteritis. You know, gastro meaning stomach, but enteritis meaning small intestine, large intestine. And a virus attacks and it makes everything not working so well, so it doesn't absorb things, and so the fluid just goes right through you. And there's some people who say don't slow it down, let the virus wash out. If you take Imodium to slow you down, which is one of the things that we commonly prescribe, the theory is that it might keep that bug inside you. People, if you use Pepto-Bismol, they say that's protecting the wall from the virus, so that's a better choice. But again, it gives you black stool, and it makes people worried about bleeding. But anyway, I was reading this discussion about the old people, the ancient doctors and people didn't know that it was that some of this stuff was a bacteria, and they oftentimes would have people go out to the privy or go into the system and then put the system into the drinking water and spread the illness. And so before they understood that it was an infectious process, we were spreading it. I mean that, and some of those were not viruses but bacteria too.
So how is someone going to know the difference in a viral or bacterial process if it's the vomiting and diarrhea type illness?
Right. You give it a day or two, and most viruses will run its course in a day or two. And what I generally say, just like what you said, and I'll just repeat to highlight them, is I don't push anything when people are vomiting. You just
Rest
don't,
the stomach.
Yeah, don't drink, don't eat, nothing. When you finally are starting to get thirsty and hungry again, start very slow with clear liquids, water is a good choice. People talk a lot about replacing electrolytes and using Pedialyte, which is expensive. But really, you don't need to worry so much, you just need the volume of fluid. So it's water. It can be warm water, it can be hot water, it can be cold water. If you want to do the Pedialyte equivalent, which is cheaper, you can use Gatorade, which has the salt in it, and white grape juice, which has the potassium in it. So the sodium in the Gatorade and the white grape juice for the potassium. And white grape juice doesn't have what the blue or purple grape juice has that has a certain sugar that causes diarrhea. So people talk about white grape juice, but I haven't seen it on the shelves lately. Have you?
I think it's there. I haven't looked, but I think it's there.
But, so when you go, you don't take anything by mouth for a while, you go to clear liquids, which is nothing milk. Milk is the last thing you're going to want to add. Because
Any other dairy.
Yeah, or any dairy, because milk has a sugar that's a disaccharide, it's hard to absorb, it causes a lot of problems with people. So you avoid milk until you're really well.
What about the Dr. Holm brat diet? We haven't talked about that yet.
Well, then the third thing, after you're in clear liquids and you're able to take it, you want to advance your diet. Now, Joni will respond to that particular brat diet theory, but I kind of like the brat diet because it's easy to remember. Little kids who have diarrhea and, are irritable and they're little brats. Bananas, rice, applesauce, toast, B-R-A-T, brat. Those are easily absorbed. And I add eggs to those, so bratty kids. But there are people who say that that's unnecessary, except avoid milk. What do you think?
I don't recommend it quite as often, but not for any particular reason. I think if we just go slowly. But in general, yes, those are nice foods.
And,
So-
eggs in particular, because there's no better protein source in the world.
And easy to digest.
And easy to digest.
Good finger food for children, for
Right.
toddlers.
Unless you were going to drink your own blood. which is probably not encouraging.
Well, on that note, let's go to our second break, and we'll hope you'll stay with us and come back to Prairie Doc Radio with your questions. To Prairie Doc Radio. Please call us with your questions at 692-1430. This is Joni Holm filling in for Joan Hogan, and we have Rick Holm in studio.
And they get no escape from you, do they? Because we take a break, and then there comes Joni Holm.
Oh, my voice, yeah. Well, sorry, folks.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the gastroenteritis or stomach virus.
And Bob said
Bob
that he
had a
talked with
story.
Ellsworth. Let's hear it.
Well, I was at the home show on Saturday, and I saw Dr. Ellsworth and his wife come out pushing a little fella in a stroller, and I said, well, you working today? And he said, yeah, I had the call over at the walk-in. And he said, we saw 30-some patients today, about half of which were complaining about symptoms related to the gastrointestinal disorders, and the other half, the upper respiratory, sinus and cold and things. So it's kind of an even split. And then I also heard some various folks that came by, they had kids with pink eye. That is making the rounds now. I know Dr. Susan from the optical shop has a little one at home now sick with it. So have you noticed that?
Yeah.
I always see pink eye, and of course I work with children, and so it isn't, I haven't noticed a big increase, but whenever there's a few cases, particularly in a daycare, you're going to see a few cases coming in. Same thing with hand, foot, and mouth. That's a really common illness, and it comes in spurts. All of those do. The thing about pink eye, and Rick and I are in agreement with this, is that most of the time, well, there isn't a good way to tell whether it's viral or bacterial when you have that red eye, with the exception that the conjunctivitis that's caused by a bacteria, there's three kinds of red eyes. There's allergy, there's viral, and there's bacterial. Three basic kinds. There's probably more than that. But the bacterial is the one that we worry about with the children in daycare because their parents need to get back to work. It's a reality. And the children are infectious. And so if the eye is mattery and they're having to wipe that green, yellow matter material out of the eye frequently throughout the day, we call that bacterial and we generally treat. In agreement?
Right. And there's, it used to be that the most infectious thing, I remember the ophthalmologist giving this lecture at Grady Hospital in 1970 something, that the most infectious element in the world is pink eye, because viral pink eye, it just spreads like wildfire. And I thought from that, and I've been saying for years that most pink eye is just virus, runs its course and it's gone.
Leave it alone.
But recent article in the JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, stated that 80% of pink eye is bacterial. And I read on and I said, well, gee, that means that an antibiotic for the eye, which we've been doing because there's always that risk. I always thought of 20% bacterial, but so you use the antibiotic even though it doesn't make viral conjunctivitis any better. The answer in the paper was that the antibiotic helps the kid not be infectious and you can go back to school better. But if you left it alone, it's a self-limited disease.
It would get better.
It gets better on its own.
It's just this world we live in, and I totally get it. I mean, if you had the opportunity to be home, that might be an option to wait it out. But parents are stressed, and they are being held accountable by their work
Rules.
Yes, and there are legitimate times they need to be out, and when the child feels fine but has a pink eye, let's get them back. Let's get them on treatment and get them back so parents aren't missing a day.
And the rule they're saying is if they've been on eye drops for 24 hours, then they can go back to school. I think that's a decent deal. And how many eyes have we saved by giving them an antibiotic? I don't know. How many allergies to antibiotics have we caused? Probably some.
Lots.
So it's not an important issue, except that what we're standardly doing, even though it isn't scientific sense, because it is a self-limited disease for the most part, is we give them antibiotics and they can get back to school in 24 hours. Now, the time that we need to, this is the time that we should bring up conjunctivitis secondary to people who have
Allergies?
have lenses. People who have contact lenses. They can have bad infections. And they can have irritations. They'll come in with contact lenses and red eyes. I'll see teenagers all galore. And the treatment is take the doggone lenses out for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to take the contacts out and clean them and let them soak. But you've got to let your eyes heal before you put those contacts back in.
Right, there it is. And I put them on an antibiotic, and maybe it's allergies, but, so there's anti-allergy drops that you can use that are over the counter.
There are, and there are prescription drops. I remember recently sending in a prescription drop for a child that was having itchy eyes, and I got a call back from the pharmacy, and they said, Mom's standing here, and she's not willing to pay $113 for this eye drop. I'm like, oh my gosh, neither am I. So luckily the pharmacist was able to direct me to the now over-the-counter version of that.
Right, and I mean, I've been on some eye drops because of eye problems of late, and I've asked Ken Knudsen, every time, okay, you can give me a sample, that's fine, but when it runs out, I want the generic. Are you sure you got to take it more often and it burns a little bit more? And I go, what's the difference? It costs, $120. Well, you don't have to pay because it's being paid by insurance. I've got deductibles, or they don't want to pay for the prescription when the generic is available, or that whole thing goes on, and somebody has to pay for that expensive pills or drop. So I go generic every time.
And we encourage you listeners to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have a question. I read once, and it's probably wrong, that there are certain ethnic groups that are more prone to problems that arise from pink eye, specifically Native Americans. Is that true?
I haven't heard that.
I don't know that either.
Okay, I read once that there was an outbreak in a town that they were able to trace back to a swimming pool that a lot of Native American kids were swimming at, and practically every single one of them there contracted pink eye, and a very severe case of it too. So.
Well, swimming pool and hot tubs can carry gram-negative bacteria. And the gram-negative bacteria, Pseudomonas, E. coli, a lot of the gram-negatives are also fecal bugs. That's not to say that we don't have a lot of exposure to the fecal bugs. In fact, probably some of our major medical illnesses are because we have avoided the exposure to fecal bugs. There's a lot said about the advantage of our microbiomes, and we should have more exposure to those fecal bugs than we have. And we're even giving transplants, quote unquote, of fecal bugs to people who have overgrowth problems because they haven't been exposed to enough of the world's fecal flora, and you give them an enema that has your relatives' feces. But all that said, some of those will get into your eyes if they're in too high of a concentration. They'll cause infection in the eye, and you can get urinary tract infections and all sorts of problems from too high of a concentration. Or if you go to Mexico and you eat their food, there is a high concentration of fecal flora in their world, more than we're used to. And that's what Montezuma's revenge is. It's just an exposure to a lot higher concentration than we're used to.
And the population they're eating it every day don't have the problem because their bodies have adjusted.
Yeah, that's it. You get used to it. Your body lives with this fecal flora, and it's okay to eat more concentration of the stuff.
Let's take our third break, and then we'll come back. We would appreciate your questions at 692-1430. Prairie Doc Radio. This is Joni Holm. We have Rico Mintz studio. I have to tell a quick story. As long as when we were talking about hot tubs, it made me think of it. There is an infection you can get if your hot tub chemicals aren't correctly balanced and you have a little bit more of that growth with the gram negatives. So every now and then, and I know you've had this, Rick, where a person comes into your office and they go, oh, we've got these spots and we don't know what they are, and you look at them and you say, you've been in a hot tub lately? And their eyes get big and go, how did you know? And it's a pretty classic looking lesion, and so you feel like a magician figuring this out, and it's like, woo, I got it.
But you nailed it.
It's one of those fun ones where
Well,
you can say, I think I know what this is.
Yeah, good for you on that. And Pseudomonas is generally the character that lives in that hot tub. And you get a folliculitis, meaning that it attacks, inflames the follicle or the hair follicle. And if you want to know where the hair follicles are on your body, just get goosebumps. And every one of those little bumps is where a follicle kind of, the muscle that surrounds the follicle squeezes and it pushes that goosebump up. And it can occur in your hair, but it can occur in hairless parts of your body. Well, every part of our body has
Just a little bit of hair.
a little bit of hair or a little residual or a little fuzz or whatever. I wanted to talk a little bit about competence. And we've got just 4 minutes. So I'll just throw this out to you very quickly, that when a person loses their antegrade memory, their ability to learn a new thing, that's really the most important test of them all. Now you can talk about naming and words and function are important. I think the Tupperware in the oven, dysfunction, judgment calls that are kind of like that is really historical. How are they doing at home? But when you can't learn a new thing, that's it. And how do you measure that? You ask them to remember 3 things, and then ask them to remember what were those 3 things again, and then ask them what those 3 things were again. And I think that's probably your most important test. And when you lose that antegrade, new thing memory, you still hold on many times to the old memories. It isn't the old memories that are
safe.
lost at first.
But those aren't the ones that keep you safe either.
No.
It's the ones that you have to live.
You gotta have
My
those-
dad could tell the story about his old horse Dan. He could tell that story over and over and over again and not remember that he told it. And
There
it was
it
a
is.
great story, but
He
it
heard it
didn't
too many
help.
times.
Yeah, it didn't help if he didn't remember if he took his medicine or not.
Yeah, no. So that's the major issue, and you can get the details. You can do a mini mental status exam, which is probably the most common way of measuring it. And if you're above 20, you're okay, and if you're below 20, and if you're on 20, you're borderline. And you can look that up on the internet. But really, it's the antegrade memory that matters. Bob.
You forwarded me a test a couple of weeks ago to test your reflexes.
Yeah.
How did you do on that?
They said I was 25, 27.
27 too.
So
Yeah.
obviously we are
Quick.
very smart.
Now, I watched a little boy yesterday at the clinic who was playing a video game as he waited for me, and his mom politely asked him, or took it away from him when it was time to pay attention, but oh my gosh, was he good at it. And this guy was about 4. And his reflexes as he moved this little car, I know I couldn't have done it. So this test must not be that skilled.
Well, Bob and I could do that. I mean,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
my competency is slipping.
Yeah, that antegrade memory.
It becomes more difficult for me to
remember a new thing.
It does. It really does.
Of course,
In
that's-
computers, oh my, I am not
Technology,
good at remembering
yeah,
new things on
I know.
computers.
I think, though, remember, the most important thing to keep your brain sharp is to work it. If you don't use it, you lose it. It's like that with an elbow or a knee. It's like that with your heart muscle and lung. It's like that with your brain. And the best activity to exercise your brain, no question about it, isn't the puzzle. It isn't,
It's a competence test.
it is
Reading.
no, actually, the studies say to have a conversation.
Really?
Because it's reciprocal.
Well, not only that, but you have to listen. You have to have, there's a conversation that is listening and sharing and is talking about different issues that are, you think about a lot of things when you're listening and you're having a discussion.
There might be a few women out there listening who say, wow, there's no conversations in this marriage, because sometimes men aren't known to listen.
Yeah, but look here. Every Wednesday, for half an hour, we give a chance to sit around and everybody converses.
Yeah.
and
We're
have a
so
chance to
smart.
think and,
Oh, it just makes us smarter.
Yeah.
It's not working for me, though.
No.
There's always the exception, right?
So the conversation is an important thing to do, and you can do puzzles too. But just sitting in front of the TV is probably not your best deal, unless you're doing the quiz thing at 5:30 and then you answer all the questions. But I like the idea of a conversation as your exercise. And we're out of time, Joni.
Well, I appreciate everyone listening to Prairie Doc Radio. We come to here to talk with you every Wednesday at 9:30. You can write in your questions or you can call them in, and we'd be happy to answer them next week, and we'll see you then.
And don't forget about tomorrow night's show, 7 o'clock, South Dakota Public Broadcasting Television. We'll ask anything. So we'd love that. And thanks, Joni, and thank you, Bob. Stay healthy out there, people.
That's good advice.